Now we should be good.
Okay, so I did just want to point out, since this is the first one, I was kind of trying to find the sweet spot on not having to unnecessarily kill a lot of trees and make a lot of copies, and then we're going to do it all again next week. So some things I have a lot of copies of, some things I don't. So as we go along, I'll kind of get the feel for what you guys want and what you don't want out of this meeting. But the first one that we're going to probably do, the 2 or 3 items on the agenda, is this one, and I think I did 5 copies, so that's one for each council person and one for the mayor, and then the rest of you guys got a copy of it yesterday in your email, but it's my regular monthly report, and I'm just going to point out some metrics off of it in there. Read it. What more, Christian? Try it, memorizing done.
Anybody else got one?
Yeah, if anybody else wants one, we've got time to go make us another copy if anybody needs it. But it's the first 10 pages of the monthly regular report, and this is for December ending. And we're still, actually, Crystal will probably cut another check for Bryant Parkway this afternoon, and so that number will change, but it doesn't affect the items at the front, just the detail on the back. So, and then let's see. I'll pass things out as we go along, because I want to hit all the items on the agenda, and then we can kind of open it up and see if there's anything you guys like, didn't like, or want to add or take away. So I put reviewing any budget variances by monthly expectation for the 5 major funds. So that will become more important as we get further into the year, but that would be one of the things that if I was a council person that I would look at each month. And so I just wanted to point it out to you that on these top 2, page 2 and 3, the executive summary pages, that over here on this, it shows you the year-to-date budget, and then it shows you the year-to-date expected amount if you just were to divide it by 12 or whatever month you were in. So for right now, for December ending, the first column, annual budget, and the year-to-date budget are the same, if you'll notice that. And so, but during the year, like next month when I do closing January, it'll take 1/12 of that budget, and it'll be for January. And then over here on the far right side will be the variance. And so just, you know, like I said, if I was a council person, if I wanted to see, well, are we kind of tracking, just, you know, it's a loose thing to look at, because, you know, of course, it's not always going to be 1/12 for everything, but it's a good starting point. And these 2 pages, major funds, obviously general fund on top, divided by department, then street, then on the next page at the top you've got water, then wastewater, then the stormwater fund at the bottom. So that's, like I said, that number 1 item on the agenda will become more important later, but did anybody have any questions on it, or, you know, any thoughts on leaving it on this agenda to look at? It would just be one of the items. Like when I look at the report, that's one of the things I look at. So, okay, well then we'll move on to number 2, reviewing the operating cash levels for the 5 major funds. Also on the similar, that's on page 5 for 5 and 6. So right now, and I do stress right now because we're still pulling year end together and doing all of our audit adjustments and all that, we're at 173 days ending the year. But once again, this is kind of a weird time, because next month when I bring you January, I'm going to revamp, see it says updated 2/7/23. I'm going to update that next month. Thanks, Troy. Update that next month for the new, fresh 120 days for the last 6 months of expenses. So, you know, I would anticipate that's probably going to go down on days in cash for general fund, because it typically does. And then up at the top, it includes our sales tax fund. So any savings we have in that fund, our designated tax, which they are specified on the far right for what they have to be spent on, but they're included in that 120 days calc. And then the general fund balances. It subtracts out the Spring Hill obligations and the emergency telephone obligations. And then down at the bottom of the page are the street funds, and it's a similar thing. All of that will be updated for starting the next year at, you know, at the February meeting for ending January. But, you know, I would say 173 days is a pretty good place, especially if we if it's gonna go down a little bit because of recalculating every, 6 months. So, we all know street, as far as our 5 major funds, is probably the most healthiest for their cash balance right now. But theirs is going down too, because they're getting some major projects done. So then flip it over one more page to page 6, and these are the two that, kind of have been giving us worry for the last year, water and wastewater, because of pre-funding the meter project on water mostly. And, originally we were gonna use the $2 million from the, ARPA funds, and that's why it actually doesn't look any worse than it does. But, then A&R would give us the amount of the 3.5 for the full project, and we're still waiting on those funds, although we have recently signed the paperwork. And so it's moving, it's just moving really slow. Tim, do you have anything you want to add? Okay, June. So, I put in the, impact fee funds on these 2 items, and we have pulled money out in the last couple of years out of those. I took depreciation fund off this page, but we have pulled some money out of depreciation fund. And then, so that kind of goes to then the page 7, the following page, and y'all slow me down if I'm going too fast. But page 7 is an overall of all of the cash that we have. And on the far left is our pooled cash, and then you work your way over. The middle is the balance sheet, which in my report, I typically include the balance sheet balances, and then the ending bank balances, and then any outstanding items like outstanding checks or outstanding deposits, and then on the far right, the petty cash amount. So that's kind of number 2, which was to look at the cash and the cash levels, and we can talk more a little bit later in the meeting about some items that I'm going to be bringing to the January meeting about CIP and any recommendations I have on spending those. Which actually gets to item number 3. It says review any upcoming issues or items. So typically I bring you guys back the list of CIP to approve for general fund in January. We talked at the department head meeting this morning, and we agreed that most of those items, there aren't very many. There's some parks items that are bigger, and they would necessitate doing Amendment 78 to pay for them. So we can't actually do that right now because we haven't done all the lead-up work for Amendment 78 yet. There's a few fire items, and I think I'll go print there. Maybe I'll get Crystal to go print us a copy of the CIP list. I didn't think about bringing it in here. Do you want to? Where's Nicole? Nicole, sure.
In the back of the budget?
Yeah. Can you print us 11 of them? Sorry. I know she will know exactly which page it's on. And then, so there's a few that I think we would be okay at 173, even if we drop down, 10 or 20 days, we'd still be above our 120 within our cushion range to go ahead and approve the ones for fire. JP has did he call it a cascade?
Cascade payment.
Compressor. It's a safety issue, and he feels.
The compressor to fill the air tank.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yes, and he's talked to you guys about it before, but I'll probably bring that and maybe doing the audio visual in the fire training room to just take those amounts out of savings. And so where you would see that is back there on page 5. Right now, I've got the rolled expenses from 2023 capital estimated, and you're going to see that later, and all these numbers will tie back and forth to one another, but that 127,000 is encumbrances rolled. I would add in, if you approve to take JP's out of savings, that's where I'll put it, so that it comes out of that 120 days. So, number 4 was review any large projects, mostly capital, so we'll kind of get to those when we do the encumbrance list, because most of them are on the encumbrance list. And then reviewing any items coming to council for approval related to finance. I have a copy of my tentative department head report, and I know it's in here somewhere. I've got too many pages. Where is it? I know I printed it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, if you wanna pass those around, down at the bottom of this one, oh, sorry. Down at the bottom of this one, it says a change has been made to your page 68 of the 2024 budget binder. A John Deere compact tractor was budgeted for $68K and is being replaced instead with a Ventrac tractor with a mower and stump grinder attachment. And I've got the sole source letter, and it'll be uploaded onto the agenda for $65K, which is a budget savings of $3,000. And then a change has been made to page 68 of your budget book, a 24-foot Palmer N dump trailer out of line 080, 0800, 5010, 56800. See the source letter. That's going to be in the encumbrance list because I'm asking for a budget adjustment to add the difference between those two. So 53,800 would be in addition to streets capital. They have had some cash savings because of things that they sold on gov deals. I don't know how much covers that increase, but they were going to ask for that in 2025, and they'd like to go ahead and ask for it early. So that's an unusual item. And then a lot of this is the stuff that is unusual for ending of the year, you know. Ideally, at the end of the year, my report that I would bring you would have no encumbrances on it. And so when you look in that column, you're going to see there's still some messiness in the encumbrance column, but that's because in Tyler, and it used to do this every year in Springbrook too, and it drove me crazy. If you use the incorrect dates to close things, you know, we do things in batches a lot of times. So if you have one in your batch and it had the wrong date on it, then it hangs out there. So I've identified all of those for you guys, the lines that they're on, and you can see the bulk of them are not big. The biggest one is that $97,000 for street, and that was that Entergy late billing that they did in 2022. And if now in Tyler, if you run the 22 report, you see that same encumbrance go in the other direction in 2022. So it's just it's a timing thing. It's not a, you know, and encumbrances are just when you intend to spend something, actually not when you spent it. But in any event, it kind of drives me a little crazy because it messes up my report. But we'll continue to mess with those and try to get where we can, you know, because I like to get it as clean as possible by the end of the time. But anyway, while I was bringing it to you, I wanted to go ahead and explain what they were. So the other ones are mostly capital related. It's the same sort of thing where, you know, we roll them and pay them, and so they show up in the wrong period. But does anybody have any questions on those? Like I say, they're kind of an unusual item that'll only be on once a year with the encumbrances. Okay, so that was my department head report. Record destruction will be on for you guys this month, and Crystal wanted to do an extra batch of record destruction. We try to do at least once a year, and she was like, you know, I think I could get another one done and clean a little bit of stuff out of our closet, because we're actually trying to get away from having to store stuff upstairs, because it's really hard to get up and down those stairs carrying boxes. So every little bit we can, we're kind of chipping away at not having to use the upstairs. And plus courts needs all that space too, although they're getting a paperless solution, and we're kind of envious. But anyway, so we'll have that. I brought a copy of it. I didn't really think that I needed to make copies for everybody because I wasn't sure if anybody really cares that much about record destruction, but you're welcome to see it. It's in the... I mean, I will ask for somebody to volunteer to be there.
Call rainy day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, budget adjustments for 2023, I have those here. Yes, these are the 2023 ones. They are, for the most part, year-end cleanup, mostly related to the bond stuff again. At some point, I'll get happy with those and quit messing with them. But, so there's not a lot on there other than that, and trying to make everything exactly right for the end of the year. So once again, I'll do at least one more round of cleanup work as we do our budget adjustments and stuff like that, or thank you, our end of the year. Thanks. Any questions on that list of budget adjustments? Take your time, because like I said, you know, my downfalls, I tend to go fast. It's a new meeting, so I'm kind of nervous.
You're doing good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Keeping the light
It,
Yeah, I know, and this was me trying to be conservative. I was like, well, I'll just do 5 copies, and then I was like, then I got in here and I was like, now everybody's gonna have a copy.
do you want to do a little bit of explanation for them around, the discussion on that, the day's savings?
Mhm.
And, so I'll just ask you some questions, you can answer them. How's that? Where does that savings come from? When we say savings and we're growing that pool of money, how does it get there?
Well, a couple of different ways, but the biggest way is, you know, what people have an issue with, mostly our budget, is if our budget has any extra in it, which it typically does if everything goes well during the year, then we put that into savings and spend it, you know, in the following years on capital. If we have a year where, like, you know, health insurance increases and we don't have a good year, then obviously we don't get to put anything back to savings. And so, you know, loosely over the last, you know, especially the last 4 or 5 years, that's kind of in the back of my mind been my plan, you know, because we don't have, as you guys know, we don't have an official capital fund or any kind of a planned maintenance fund. So that's kind of the way we've been funding capital, is through that device. And, you know, there other things can happen that can put it in there, you know, like if we get a grant and we didn't budget, because sometimes we don't budget those if we don't know we're going to get them. So there's lots of different ways where, you know, if we have a windfall, we put it to our, and like I said, typically, if it's over 120 days, which I like to keep it that way for several different reasons, but one is so that I can say, you know, I feel okay about us doing capital out of this.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And we've never set the 120 days in ordinance to have, but it has been an excellent practice.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Isn't our ordinance 90 days, or isn't that state law or something?
They say a lot of 60.
State, well, for yours,
Yeah.
but general fund, I've actually looked around and I don't know that there is one, which I think might be the reason that some places get into a bind. Because if there's not something, like especially on the smaller cities, if legislative audit doesn't require you to do something, then a lot of times they don't do it. And, you know, you get an issue, and I mean, you could blow through a lot of your cash in no time at all, you know. So that's the reason why, you know, if you read a lot of, you know, my journals for governmental accounting and stuff, usually it's anywhere from 90 to 120 days, but I always go with 120 days with the added thing that to keep it at 120 days, it needs to be over 120 days, because, you know, and depending on how often, when I first got here, I used to rerun that pretty regularly because we were not in as good a position as we are now. So I would redo it every 3 or 4 months because we were needing to know. Now our general fund balance is okay, you know, and then we blew through a lot of that this, you know, not a lot, but we blew through some of it this year, but, you know, we could, you know, and we had the cushion and we're still over the 120 days. But, you know, if you, like I said, I've seen it happen a couple of times. The one before this last time was when we had the health insurance issue, and it took us, we formed a committee, it took us 4 or 5 months to make a decision on that. And in that 4 or 5 months, you know, we were just basically taking that difference out of savings. So, you know, any more questions on it?
there's a couple of things I just want to make sure that everybody grasps in when we talk to you, to council about different things.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of talked about this, want to make sure there's a full understanding. So we put back that money for capital expenditures and things of that nature because those are typically one-time expenditures. So you have saved the money now,
Mm-hmm.
and you use them for capital expenditures or things that are one-time. Ongoing, in other words, if you look at that and you say, hey, we need 15 new positions, or we need to increase yada yada, that's ongoing, begun to affect the long-term budget
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah.
Because you have to repeat that.
And those kind of things, I always recommend that we either save for the regular annual budgetary process, or when you approve those things, you at that time approve the funding mechanism for those things. So, you know, a lot of times you'll see our departments, you know, they'll bring you an idea for something different they want to do, but they have already thought about how they're going to pay for it because they're intending it to be a go-forward change, you know. So, And that's kind of just to keep those two buckets separate, like she was saying, the one-time capital things versus your ongoing regular operational items.
So, so as she monitors, and you guys monitor, and I monitor those days that are sitting there, then, you know, we can talk and say, hey, let's bring this and let's go ahead and get XYZ capital amount, because we have that sitting there for now, and we're comfortable with that. We wouldn't bring you, I think that's where you have to be careful, because Amendment 78, to bring you for capital, that's an ongoing expense now, correct?
It is, and it's over 5 years. So it's basically like saying, do we have this to pay for over the next 5 years, the yearly payment on it. And so that's why, you know, I try to look at everything, and I told the department head this morning I wanted a little bit more time to rerun all the numbers and everything to see, can we afford to do that again? The other thing about Amendment 78 is you're paying interest on something, obviously. You know, the more interest from local banks that you have, the better a rate you're going to get. And I've found, you know, they really give you a better deal if you go over $1 million. You know, they don't necessarily want to mess with doing smaller amounts. So, because it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of work. So, you know, if we bundle our stuff together, but then that means we've got to have enough in the current market to pay the annual payment and the interest on that for the next 5 years. So, and you don't know until you put it out, you know what I mean? Like, you can kind of gauge what your interest is going to be, but you don't know for sure, so.
How hard is that?
You mean how to, like, get it, you know, if I wanted to get it it'd be really, you know, pretty hard. But, because I never know, some years they've really surprised me because the banks have been super competitive with one another, but their environment, you know, who knows what they're dealing with at the time they're dealing with, because they've all got their portfolios or whatever that they're trying to fill. And so if our thing hits at a time, you know, that they fits those metrics, then they're going to want to go after it. So they give us a lower rate. If it's not at the time, then, you know, it's not. I mean, I've had it before where every bank I sent it to responded. And I've had it before where I sent it out and only half of them did. So, you know, you never know what you're going to get. I would guess by just stuff that's going on right now that they will be very interested.
Yeah.
Who's that?
The banks.
Any
And
bank?
I send it usually to every bank in Bryant. So, and I put it in the newspaper. I run it twice. So, typically, that's what I do with it, you know. And like I said, I've had good success with that, you know.
I just wanted, Joy and I talked about wanting kind of that whole byplay between those days and savings and what it really is and where it comes from and why we suggest using it different ways. You know, it's kind of understood, because it is a shifting thing. Yeah. But for y'all to understand, when we're talking savings, we're talking that. When we're talking budget, it's a different, they're two different animals. We may have some money in savings because of a windfall or a grant that came in that covered something we had expected to have to pay for, you know, but we don't necessarily suggest using that for the day-to-day ongoing, this year, next year, ongoing expenses, because you never know if you're really going to be able to have that. And it was invaluable to us this past year because we were sitting at 240 days.
It was a pretty big, it was probably the highest, but here was part of that. I had not reevaluated.
Yes.
And, you know, that's what burned us too, was I reevaluated and it dropped down, just like I'm getting ready to do now. So, you know, like I said, I mean, you know, I'm kind of, you know, it's like I have these routines like everybody else does and certain things I do, and I'm really big on everything. I do this every month. If I don't do something every month, it's really hard to remember to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and everything was going okay, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, well, okay, back in the day when like I said, I was looking at it all the time, you know, but, so, it had been a while, and, then when I reevaluated it, it dropped down significantly. So there were two things that happened there, you know, the fact that we made a decision and we spent some out that we hadn't really planned for, but then also when we reevaluated the calc, the numbers went down.
And for this, you get the numbers from. This isn't a number that Tyler spits out for you. You actually calculate it based on the difference between the cash that you have and what you know is going to be coming out of that. And
well, what I do with it is I actually take the prior 6 months worth of expenses, average it, and that's how I get the 120 days. So, so whenever, like, if you look at this, the 10 pages right now where it says I did it back, I think the last time was in February of last year. So, you know, so what I would have done at that time was go back through the prior 6 months, probably June to December, you know, because we're still trying to, I was probably doing this right around, you know, this time last year. And so, and take those. So that's another reason why I was kind of holding off before I did it. And I'll do it for when we bring the January report, because I want to get everything in through the end of the year, you know, that we would do in a typical year. Because sometimes our stuff, we pay it once a year at the end of the year, you know, so not everything is ideally like 1/12 every month. So, so yeah, that's what I do. And then I figure out what that would be, and then I times it times days, and that gives me the 6.5 million. And then these are all formulas deducting from that amount.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
thanks.
that's good. And, you know, something we might want to point out, I mean, over here on page 7, you know, that calculation doesn't have every single bit of cash we have in it, obviously. It doesn't have any of our bond funds, because those are obligated for certain things. So if you want a full picture of everything that we have money in the bank, it's page 7. And it's the ending bank balances column. But those balances, you know, a lot of them are fully obligated for certain things that we have to spend them on by law. So we really can't do anything with them other than what they're there for. So, and I really like page 7. It's new
Nice.
last year, because I was able to do it with Tyler. And it kind of, when I go through the report, I always look at those 2 columns on the right, our outstanding checks and our outstanding deposits, because if something's not clearing or not working, like you probably noticed for a lot of last year, there were Tyler conversion issues on this page. So that's how I see if something's not being resolved, if we're having issues, that's where I check that every month.
You want to do capital stuff. I'm done.
Yes, yeah, we can do
I just knew she had really wanted to get those in, and I thought I would
Yeah, no, it's great. And,
make sure it was understood.
So about midway down on the first page are the items that I mentioned for parks. And see, they're over $1 million just by themselves, so we have to, I would think we'd want to do Amendment 78. And then, on the next page, about midway down, are the 4 items for fire. And I know the Cascade compressor, definitely, and then, like I say, the AV system in the training room, those are the 2 JP mentioned this morning. JP and Gordon both said these estimates on the 83 and the 60,000 are more than 6 months old at this point. So, I'm gonna give these to council and state what we're doing at this meeting now, but we're not gonna ask you for anything till the February, because they want to see if they can get better estimates and bring those to you at the February meeting. So, but that's coming down the pike. We also talked a lot about, did you want to talk there about the parking lot issues in the city hall and the roof? Those items are not on here.
Yeah. We have had just, I think, some little bubbles stuck out there for years on repairs and things that need to be done here in the city hall, and even building a new city hall, of which, you know, I can tell you, we need to consider something for the future and really make a plan for it. And it's going to be in y'all's court with whoever's mayor next and whoever this council is, and working with staff to really get a plan down for what do we do with City Hall. This building is definitely aging. There's definitely roof problems. There's definitely all kinds of things here. The one I think, for me, that bothers me most, that is outward facing, is our parking lot. I hope you all park in the back, not along the street in front, so you can experience the disrepair. And it's strictly because we have not, there's not been the ability to make it some sort of a priority. So I have asked Tim this morning to get some quotes and some thoughts on it.
Also, our parking lot is not in ADA compliance whatsoever.
Yeah.
So,
I would love to see us consider that as we get some quotes and some things, see how much it is, and think about it, because it is, it's not what I want.
Yeah, I noticed the asphalt piled up
Mm-hmm.
pulling in today.
Yeah. And I mean, it just gets worse every time there's rain, snow, ice. It's, you know, it's in tough shape. It's not what I want our public to have to drive through to get to park and come see us.
Or get stuck in.
Yeah, or get stuck in.
Lose a wheel.
And whether we decide tomorrow that we're gonna move this building and go somewhere else, you're looking 3 to 5 years before you could even, it's not gonna happen tomorrow. And I think a lot of the things that have gone on within this building have been well, we're gonna leave. We're gonna get into City Hall, so don't do anything. Don't waste the money on that. And I understand that. I also understand that it's gonna be another 3 to 5 years. Even if you formulate a plan now, you're looking further down the road, and I don't find it acceptable for us to live like with that parking lot for the next 3 to 5 years and not do anything with it. So we're gonna bring you some thoughts on it, some pricing, some quotes. But that,
Yeah, how much? Ballpark?
the striping and that stuff, we have bid prices on, so that would be the lowest bid. I don't have it front. The asphalt, no, because if it's Cranford who does it, they are rebidding their price right now with the county, and it looks like it's gonna go up another $7 a ton, so, which is about an 80% increase in 3 years.
unfortunately, we don't have any.
If we can get them to do it, I mean, they're busy with the RDOT stuff, they would be the cheapest, because we pay county bid price on asphalt for them. So we're a private company, and it's probably gonna be more expensive. What was the quote for yours, do you remember?
I don't.
You're probably looking over $100,000.
How would we pay for it?
That's what we'd have to find next, whether it's something that we looked at. And that's why I wanted y'all to fully understand the savings that are there, watching the days, what is brought to you as we feel comfortable that we could dip into that, or is it an Amendment 78 as she is over the next couple of months?
So if it comes back, if the first quote or two come back expensive, just take it out to bid.
Yeah, that's true. So, but I would not bring you anything without some type of this is what we're comfortable pulling it out of, you know, and y'all knowing that.
Whatever came, did we ever get any results from that truck that drove around the city and looking at every street?
We have all that.
Oh, do you? Do you have a recap of it, or
Yeah, I can bring you guys a recap as well.
just email it out?
But, and I mean, you know, that's why I wanted you to start thinking about it and realizing the expenses there and look at what it is. If it's brought to you, to consider, it may take another 6-7 months to determine we have the money to pay for it, but at least we will have started down the road, and this council will be aware of it, that if we can do that sometime during this year, you know, Joy knows that savings sweet spot, and she'll be looking at Amendment 78 for ongoing, for paying for something for 5 years. Chris has been working on his stuff. We know kind of what he's gonna really have to pull out of some things, but I just wanted y'all to be aware that I'm trying to get a general idea of the cost of it, and see what we can do, because it's pretty rough. you know.
Yeah, just a sidebar conversation about the pavement analysis. When we had that done, it is, but we also had stormwater and piece of sidewalk, we had a sign inventory done at the same time, so we could actually get a proper count of how many signs we have in the city.
Oh, okay.
So that was all added to it. And then they did do the
Interesting.
LiDAR with it also, if we want to purchase it in the future. We did not make it part of that project because it was such an expense. So the LiDAR is like the 3D imaging of, so it did, I can't remember if it did up to 100 feet or 300 feet of the surrounding area.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, so you know that, I'll keep y'all informed, but that is something that has continued to, it's gotten even worse after this recent snow and ice, and it's pretty tough getting in the parking lot. Okay. Now, did you want Crystal to go over some of her, what did you want to do now?
Yeah, or we could do the, you wanna do the encumbered, or you wanna do yours?
Pass that to Joy, please. Okay, I did this with you guys in mind. I have everything that has been approved from last year's budget that rolled into this year, and everything that was approved in this year's budget. I got it listed by department. You've got water, wastewater, street, and stormwater. General does not have any capital purchases planned at this time. If it's in yellow, we have paid it. That has already been expensed. The ones that were rollovers from 22, or 23, I'm sorry, are noted on there. On streets, if all of his trucks look like this, but the very first one is a 24 Ram 2500. The approved amount was 62,000. The truck was only 35,000.
This one.
He got some discounts in there, but he budgets those a little bit higher to cover the upfitting, lights, radios, whatever goes in those trucks. And all of those trucks have the outfitting PO below it because it's two different vendors.
Okay.
So this really may not be savings until you see the outfitting cost.
It's still savings.
It's still savings.
It's gonna be under the,
It'll still be
62.
under, yes, it's still gonna be under, but there will be that, a little bit of additional for the
Right.
upfitting. And I've got it set up where I can, every month as I'm paying capital expenses, I'm going to record them on here so you can see how much we're actually spending just on capital, because that's all this is.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Crystal and I, you know, with the Tyler changes and everything, back here on the executive summary, this year was the first year that you'll notice, like, I tried to break out the capital separate, and then if you'll notice at certain points in the year, it goes in and then it comes out. And we had some issues this year with, if people were watching their budget, it made it look like they still had that amount because she was actually capitalized, and we've never actually been able to do that. We used to save all of it and do it at the end of the year as audit adjustments in the old software.
Because that was the only way the old software would let us do it.
Yeah, so now we can actually do it on a month-to-month basis. So I'm gonna, at the meeting for when we close January's books, there'll be a new note in here, like a denote that says, we're gonna actually reduce the budget by the amount she moves out of capital so that our budgets stay current and don't confuse the people using them. But since those are not increasing the budget, we're not gonna bring them back to you guys for approval, because it's always gonna be her taking out basically what we've done. So feel like, you know, legislative audit wise or accounting wise, it needs to be something brought back to you guys for a second time because you're not approving new money. So, but it is a nice clerical thing because it's gonna allow us to, you know, just one less step that we have to do at the end of the year to get everything ready for the audit. And I think it'll be a lot more accurate because, you know, you can imagine if you do stuff as it's happening, it's a lot easier to tell what's going on. You know, we get to the end of the year and have a whole year's worth of capital to take care of, and it's like, what happened here? So this will be a lot better, but it will look a little different. So, you know, we're gonna kind of tweak the report so that that's clear for you guys. And
Next month, I can bring you guys, an asset that we've capitalized already and bring the budget adjustment report and show you what she's talking about. It's just a double entry to make everything correct in the system.
Yeah. We about gave Troy a heart attack.
This is good.
Yes, we
Really
do.
good. I
Thank
like to
you.
see this.
So when we save money on those trucks, where does that savings go? Does it go back to general funds, or where does it go if you're not, you haven't
Street
used
funds will
it?
stay in the street, same with water, and
Yeah.
wastewater, and stormwater. But generally what we do when we get the savings, we'll try to purchase a piece of equipment. So, and that's when she was talking about the end dump trailer. With our savings, we can purchase that this year, but we're planning on purchasing it next. We're gonna ask the council to purchase.
Specifically, street does that a lot, you know. Troy
Well,
really,
you get all the equipment,
Yeah.
typically where it's gonna happen.
And we
Yeah.
really wait till last minute to get the trade-in value. So we always budget at the full retail value.
Good job on the saving of that truck. That's, I don't know how you did that. Take your truck shopping on me.
Yeah, we got really, actually, all of our quotes came back lower this year than, or all of the, spent money is lower than what we were quoted, so the price of vehicles are coming down. I think we saved,
Inventory's there again, isn't it?
in the Cherokees, we saved, I think, like $5,000 on each one. The trucks, you know, trade-in value was $30,000 and then some, so I don't know who they're selling these trucks to, because by the time we're done with them,
You don't want them.
I mean, it only has 27,000 miles on it, it has 27,000 hours of runtime on it, so. Yeah, no, but, yeah, they're doing a good job with that. And it keeps them from shooting themselves in the foot in case something comes back higher than what we anticipated, so.
And there are things that I think that are fine, and I've told him that he's fine. For instance, he budgeted 5 Jeep Cherokees,
We budgeted 4
4.
out of streets, but we couldn't get one. So we're replacing it with a Durango that's a little bit more expensive, but still significantly less than what our savings are, because we can get a Durango.
Yeah, because he saved so much on the Jeep Cherokees, you know, rather than, who knows when you get another, a fourth one.
It's
It's,
still budget neutral.
Yeah.
And then, Jason, that down there towards the bottom of the street, second up, it says one John Deere compact tractor.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be asked for, a different mower, because this is one of the tractors we purchased from sales of the Gov Deal stuff last year. So we didn't amend the budget, you know, in November, December, when everybody's trying to, we'd rather just amend it now.
and that's that thing that I mentioned to you guys earlier, that I'm gonna put this in your binder as a change to your budget book, page 68. So we've actually marked through the John Deere and put the VIN track, and we're gonna try and do that every time we make a change to those capital pages, so you guys can track it this year a little better.
And it's actually $3,000 cheaper than what the tractor would have cost us.
You also said, well, this is more of a question, is it gonna mess with your maintenance at all? Because I knew that you liked having all the same.
They're the only company who makes this one.
Okay.
And we did consult John Deere before we bought it, what their recommendation was on it. We'll be all right. It's specifically made for slopes. So don't have to worry about a tractor sliding off anymore.
Good.
So when the highway department's got
Very
one
close.
of those.
The highway was demoing theirs and buying 2 of them. But yeah, very close. You probably saw it on Reynolds Cloverleaf there at one
See
point.
them everywhere.
Yeah. And then, stormwater Eastwood drainage project is something we were able to afford last year, but was planned for this year. So when not that we don't, you know, have plenty of stormwater projects, but we don't have plenty of money. So when we find another project, we'll ask for a budget amendment and change the Eastwood money to a different drainage project, capital project. But again, I don't want to do that now and say, hey, we're not doing that, that money just off or sit there, or we forget about it. I'll just amend it when we get to a project.
Well, and you're gonna repurpose that ARPA money too, aren't you, within your area?
Yeah, I had an idea for that, but it wasn't a good one, I guess. We thought it was.
Yeah, we both thought it was, but talked to Arkansas Municipal League, and they,
Yeah, Highway 5, utility relocates. We'll probably have to pay for part of the design this year, finish the design next year, and then start moving it. And I wanted to use that ARPA money for that project, but that project is already reimbursable, so it would be like pay to get back, right? So they won't let us do that, so we will find something to put that $2 million towards at 1.8, whatever it was. Probably keep it in water and wastewater though, rather than move it.
Well, that's all we had on the agenda for this time, but I mean, all these are good questions. Was there anything that we didn't put on the agenda that you guys would like to see for next month?
It was very informative. Thank you.
Yes,
You put a lot of
appreciate
time
your
into it.
time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, I think, oh. Oh, no, I like it.
We should have, Joy, that's what she does.
Yeah. We really wanted that capital stuff to be as clear as possible. I'll let them know that it's confusing to me when y'all start rattling off, trading this and that, and I'm there, so, okay, you know? You guys,
It does. It does.
Got it right there when you need to know.
Thank you for that.
Welcome. I'll update it every month and get it.
I really like that.
okay.
Get a little bit larger type.
Hey, welcome to my world. That's
I went legal size paper, I got it as big as I could, right?
Mhm.
We just have to get in some cheaters.
On a closing note, I just have to tell y'all, as we end, I've been doing I always enjoy history and looking back and see where we've come from. And I happened to pull, an audit, I don't even know if I want to say the year, but
You can.
from 2014, and it was, one infraction after another. Capital equipment not being in the right account, capital equipment not even being on an account, money not being in the right places. It wasn't anything that was malicious or fraudulent. It was mistake.
Was that BJ?
That was a,
I don't
I
know.
got here in 14.
She got there in
Yeah.
So
14.
it was the
was
first.
already
tangled up,
It was really,
We talked legislative audit into doing 2013 and 2014 as a joint audit, and that was the last year they audited us. And, it was a hard audit.
yeah, it was. I read it with, I mean, I just had kind of, you know, but realizing the change that had been going on, the different staffing, the systems, I just wanted to mention that to y'all to recognize how far we've come.
Well, I know.
I mean, we may think we do, but it has, I mean, you know, when I read that, and then I look at what we get now and go, oh, you know, Joy and her staff have done a fabulous job of,
They want.
you know, of cleaning things up, of keeping it clean, very willing to make it transparent and evident and help some of us that get confused. So I appreciate it.
Crystal and Nicole and Tabitha, they all, I mean, just, I come and usually give you guys the reports and everything, but they're behind the scenes doing all that, making it look pretty, really keeping it, and they have been so on board with getting everything where it's up to date. You know, that was, before, there was a lot where things, like I was saying, where we'd have issues and they would just lag, they would just take forever to get corrected, and by the time, you know, you'd forget what the issue was by the time you got around.
Yeah.
And we don't have very much of that, knock on wood, now. I mean, if we have a problem, we stay on top of it till we figure out what to do to fix it, you know? And everybody, Tim's group, the conversion, which we're not done yet, we're still working on inventory. Look at Crystal hang her head, she's like, oh, but we're very close, and we've made it through, a tremendous, Nicole, man, bless her on the bank recon part of it, because, you know, you guys just don't know the behind the scenes changes that went into doing all that. It was really, and I was nervous. I met with the bank yesterday, and the guy, he said, you're like a different person. And I said, well, I was really in the throes of doing a conversion, and it, you know, and I knew how bad the Springbrook conversion went, because a lot of the cleanup, when I came in, they had converted in 2013. And I got here in 2014, and a lot of what I was trying to clean up was from the conversion. And they had already cleaned a bunch of it up, but it was just, I mean, and I was fearful that that was going to happen again. And I will say, on Angela's stuff for water billing, that's been the hardest, because even though she and I sat with them for hours, literally hours, telling them they did not do, half of what we do. It's like you go and you're like, but we said put it in this account, not this account. What are you doing? So it's taken a lot to get all of that, but we're very close. Like I said, I think we've just got a few little things here and there. And it'll make it even better on the reports and
Ready to adjourn?
I guess that would, does anybody have any questions, anything? No? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank y'all.